Party is about reversing some of those changes so that we can restore to the people of this province and to the other creatures of this province the things that we want our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and their great-grandchildren to inherit. So I was trying to think about what we might talk about or what I might say today, and I want you to imagine an Oreo cookie. I meant to pick one up on the way here. And if you take the two sides, the two biscuits on each side of the Oreo cookie, I see one of those as Elizabeth May, and the other one as Adriane Carr. And they're good in and of themselves. They're pretty delicious to have those wafers and to enjoy. But in the middle, there's that creamy center that brings together the real sense of what an Oreo cookie would be like. And so the Provincial Green Party is the center of the Oreo cookie. And we have these wins now at the federal level and at the municipal level. And so the Green Party of British Columbia is working to bring that cookie back together so that we can have that nice wonderful center in the provincial election, which will be happening next May. And I think that one of the reasons it's so exciting to be Green is that we are the only party that stands for what matters at this point in time. And in some ways, the Green Party is saying that if the people of Alberta want to poison the land of British Columbia with their diluted bitumen, then we're going to say absolutely no. We're going to stand up and say it's time to build a firewall around British Columbia so that we can protect this province, and we can then develop this province into the kind of sustainable place that we all want to live in. So that's mostly the message I wanted to say, that we have these wonderful wafers of the Oreo cookie, and that we invite all of you to help make the glue come together so that in May of 2013, our objective is to win 4 or 5 seats in the British Columbia legislature, and we can be a powerful force for the kind of change that we all know needs to happen in British Columbia and in Canada. We will be the gateway to a better future. Thank you.
I will now forever imagine myself as the chocolate Oreo cookie, Elizabeth. I don't know. But I think the center should be mint. It's not white, it's green.
Yum, yum.
So, first of all, my thanks to all of you for coming. My thanks to the First Nations, the Coast Salish peoples for welcoming us, and Delbert did leave, but it was a lovely welcome to really ground us in the changes that have taken place in this area and by extrapolation to our planet. What a different world we live in, and what an enormous responsibility we have in this generation to make sure that as the changes move forward, we remember how precious this planet is and how incredibly important it is to keep runs of salmon alive forever, to make sure that we have the clean environment that really our quality of life, our health, our economy are absolutely fundamentally based in. Let me first, though, thank everyone who also helped with this event. I'm not sure if you know, but this is an entirely volunteer organization and an entirely volunteer prepared event. So thank you for those who came a little early. I saw us still putting out auction items and food. It's an amazing team, and I think probably most of them who put in a huge amount of work. I know Dawn Bartel, who is sitting right here, emailed me or texted me at 3:02 a.m. this morning to say I'm 3/4 done printing the flyers. So you know, it's an amazing group. Jackie, who's just left she didn't introduce herself as the chair of the Green Party Vancouver board, but do introduce yourself to her and other members of the board that are here. Jordan Bober, who is I'm not sure, maybe he's in the other room. They're probably all handling work. Paul George. Paul? Yes, they're all handling. Just noting the members of our board. Kevin McEwen. Anyway, when you see them and see their name tags, make sure you thank them for all that they do. Is almost the first-year anniversary of my election, which was November 19th. That's a date I will never forget. November 19th, 2011. And you know, I was so excited to have Elizabeth elected. I mean, that was a thrilling moment in the history of the Green Party and all the work we put into it. So first, thank her for coming, making time in her incredible schedule to make it here tonight. But it was such an amazing victory, and I sort of then thought to myself, well, what next? And all sorts of people said, well, run locally, which I did, and let me tell you what a campaign that was. And I have to say, you know, to win by 91 votes. It was a bit of a nail-biter. And one of the things on the last poll reporting, yes, I know, we were just, and you know, it was kind of an anxious thing because we were all crowded in our campaign office and all the cameras were pulled, well, the one camera, the one Tika, who got the news of the night and then sold it to every other station. But polls just poised there to get the reaction. It took 45 minutes for that poll to report. And when it finally happened, oh my God, Carr, who is actually donating to our live auction, can't be here tonight, but she was the one who announced, she's in! And I'll never forget that moment. I love it. I love being elected. And I love being elected for a number of reasons. I feel effective. I feel that it's important that I'm there at the council table. And I know if I wasn't there would be issues that aren't raised. There would be sort of ways forward that would be different. And even as one Green, I am managing to have an impact in terms of motions passed. So let me tell you what it's like. The first day in City Hall, I was very pleasantly surprised by Elizabeth Ball of the NPA coming up to me and saying, Adriane, last term there was a problem with Suzanne Anton getting any motions seconded, so I will second any of your motions so that at least the debate can happen. And I am grateful to her for that because of that, I put motions on the table. I think it makes vision sometimes very uncomfortable that I put them on the table because it pushes things, but sometimes they find it very hard to say no once I've got it on the table. And so about 2/3 of my motions have been passed. I think we should be working out consensus in our city. And the fact that we don't have it, I think speaks loudly and clearly that we are not, the city is not engaging citizens, listening to citizens, and incorporating what they have to say in the decisions made at the council table enough. Else what we would have is people coming to council saying thank you. Thank you for that motion. Thank you for that piece of policy. Because it makes sense from our point of view. I think democracy and development are two critical issues, and I think both are not headed down the right path right now. The reason I say that is because motion after, or especially in the public hearings, public hearing after public hearing, some of them go well, but then when controversial topics come up, citizens come forward, and in the majority say this is not what we want. The rise development, the high-rise development in Mount Pleasant, 1401 Comox in the West End, 955 East Hastings in the downtown east side. There's quite a list. And they're the majority of people. And when they say no, and in some cases they're not saying no, not ever, They're saying, it's almost there, just give us a bit more time. Little Mountain Housing was another perfect example. I know Ned Jacobs is here. And it was so close to being something that the local community could really get behind. It was a small change that needed to take place. And there was an inability of my fellow council members to listen to those changes that would not have markedly altered, I think, the developer's end of the project, but instead would have made such a difference in terms of bringing down the height a little in that development that would have brought that community on board, and we would have had just such a win-win, and we didn't get it. So time after time, I'm faced with decisions, and let me tell you what goes through my head. What goes through my head is exactly what I promised you. In running for office, I said to you, in every decision, I will think of these things. Does this decision put people first? People ahead of developers? Does this decision reflect the community plans and the zoning that currently exists, which I believe is like a social contract between the city and the people who live in it? Does it allow that plan developed by people to move forward in a fruitful way in that neighborhood, honoring the work that's been put into it and the vision that's in those plans? Number 3, does this decision move us forward on a path to solving some of the bigger issues? And I'll come back to that. Some of the bigger issues like global warming, climate change, like unaffordable housing and poverty in our city. And does this decision leave our children better off in the city? I would run every decision that I make by that screen in my head before I make the decision. And if I don't feel that democracy is honored, if I don't feel that the people have bought in, knowing that it does indeed create in the decision a better neighborhood, a better future for their children, a response to the major problems we're facing, then I won't vote for something. Or I actually always start by trying to amend it. Or at minimum, seeing if I can't get the motion deferred so that more discussion can take place and a better solution happen. And you know, what I get back from the vision councillors is, there's no time, we don't have time. We have to move on, this is so urgent and that's so urgent. I think, what is so urgent that you ignore democracy? What is so, it's nothing that is so urgent that you can't take a couple of more weeks, and that's all that some people have asked for, a couple of more weeks of consultation. So that they can feel that their input gets incorporated into the decision. We have to get democracy right at the same time as we also get development right. So, in terms of development, we just had the Mayor's Task Force on Housing Affordability come back to the table for decisions without real public discussion or consultation over what the outcome decisions might be, and in the decisions embedded huge, major changes to the city, including an interim rezoning policy that upzoned every arterial in the whole city, every arterial that a bus runs down, plus 100 meters on the other side of it, every shopping strip, plus 500 meters around it, to higher density, to 6 stories from 4 in most cases. That's what 4 stories is where it's at. But the most incredibly egregious thing is that upzoning, that interim zoning policy came in without it being taken, neighborhood by neighborhood, area by area in the city, to have a discussion about whether this was right or wrong, whether it fit in their neighborhood plan or not, what it would mean in terms of the kind of development that they would start seeing along the arterials and the streets off those arterials in the neighborhoods that people live in. So I tried to delay it, failed, and then voted against that. To which I get from my vision colleagues, Adriane Carr's against housing. Well, what nonsense that is. You know, because you want to get housing right, because you want to make sure that the housing that gets built is housing that actually works for people and in the neighborhoods that we have. And you're willing to fight and wait to get that, doesn't mean you're against housing. I fought endlessly to get a definition of affordable housing that's consistent in the city. The ballpark and the goalposts keep changing. First it was, you know, it was social housing. Affordable housing was to help those who were most in need. Then it becomes housing within a certain income bracket, from $21,000 to $84,000. And a lot of it, I think, at the upper end. Then it becomes, all rental housing is affordable. Well, this is not the way to do planning. This is not the way to ensure that there is affordable housing. You need to have a very clear and well-defined definition or well-defined objective in order to know how much progress you're making towards it. If you're not making progress, it's no good to then say, oh, well, you know, now it's all rental and now we've made progress. I mean, I think changing your definition in order to say that you're achieving it is the wrong way to go. You know, you need to be very clear about what you're going for. If you're not getting there, then you try harder. You find different ways around it. You don't change the goal. In terms of the climate change issue, which I must admit is the biggest issue that we all face. There are several things that make me feel so good about the fact that I'm at that council table. We just council passed, I didn't vote for all the pieces of it, the Transportation 2040 plan. But interestingly, that plan, which was years in the work, came forward and with an objective of 2/3 of trips in the city, 2/3 being by transit, foot, or cycling by 2040. That sounds good, right? And I asked the question, but if we have increased population and we have more trips overall, could we not end up with more car trips than, even though it's a lower percentage, more car trips in total and more greenhouse gases than we started off with? So we may have a objective that says we're going to move more people into other modes of transportation, but overall, if especially we're a city that's destined to build, which is what I see. Not one development proposal is being turned down while I've been at the council table. So if it's build, we get more cars, we get more people, then we're not going to end up in any way combating climate change. So I amended the motion and asked that an equal objective be that we actually have in our transportation plan the objective of reducing greenhouse gas emissions so that we would meet greenhouse gas emission reduction targets by 2040, 33% below 2007 levels. So at least we would know that we are simultaneously getting there. So without it being on the table, probably not. I mean, it sort of makes you realize that electing one green can make a difference. And actually, I finally found that I want to get is the issue of the tankers, is the issue of the pipelines and whether those tankers will go under that Second Narrows and past Lions Gate and Stanley Park in increasing numbers over time. And I did put forward a motion early on in my term in council in February that was kind of testing the waters, and it was more to do around public consultation, ensuring that if Kinder Morgan didn't put public consultation, robust public consultation. By the way, I'm getting to loathe that word. And the reason is I just went to Kinder Morgan's little PR show last night, where it was a lot of storyboards, and really there wasn't any real, what do you think? And if you answered, well, I really don't want this project, any consideration of your point of view. So there wasn't any two-way discussion, and I hate those rooms where people don't get to hear each other's questions and don't get to simultaneously hear the answers that are put forward. Anyway, there already is consultation, but my motion was to get some consultation, and then we moved forward quite quickly, and I saw that the park board was going to put forward a motion against the Kinder Morgan project. So I actually met with the mayor and said, what do you think about this same motion coming forward to the council table? And his first response to me was, well, actually, I think it's okay at park board. I mean, they've got the problems with Stanley Park and the beaches and that kind of thing. And I said, Gregor, I really feel like this needs to be at the council table. And I'm willing to put that motion forward. But I'd be much happier to support a motion from you on this, because I think it's better for the issue. He put a motion in. Again, I think that's also, I guess, for me, a gratifying piece of being elected. It's realizing that there is an ability to work with others and to push the agenda and to get some things through and to stand up for people. Because really, you deserve, every councillor should be this way, you deserve a council that stands up for you first, ahead of developers of any other interests. It's the citizens' interests that count the most. And so I will say right now, I intend to pursue this job further and run again if you would end up nominating me in the future. In the next election, more Greens on council, more Greens in the park board, in the school board. Is Stuart McKinnon here? Did Stuart is here. Oh, stand up, Stuart. Stuart McKinnon. Green Park Board Commissioner last term, and I did have a conversation with him. If there is indeed a by-election, which we may have at the Park Board, I think that we may have a willing candidate in Stuart, and I believe we can get Stuart elected. Town too, who ran for park board, for school board. Where's Louise? She's probably busy in the kitchen. I think there she is. She came out of the kitchen. So, what would be wonderful for me is if, we could just increase that margin a little bit more than 91 votes. So one thing you could do is go out and talk to everybody you know about getting active in this campaign, and the next time around getting active in a by-election, should a by-election come our way for the park board, and make sure that, that tonight you take advantage of the opportunity to help us get some really basic things. Like when you bid on the silent auction items or on the live auction, which is about to come, what you're going to help us do is get banners. We don't even have Green Pary banners right now. Last time I won that campaign on $14,000 compared to 3.4 million that was spent by the NPA and 3.2 million by Vision. 14,000. Well, I'd like a little bit more this time too. And some banners would be nice. You could really tonight, with your generosity through the auctions, really make a difference in positioning us for a very much stronger, Oreo. Thank you all, and I think we're going to have questions and answers later on.
Okay, one more time, let's hear for Adriane. Carr. Okay, well, all this stuff, and then somebody said, somebody sent me an image of this woman who was speaking some sense to all the stuff that was going on. And I was like, wow, who's that lady? She looks normal. She looks like a regular person talking in the House of Commons, and she actually makes sense. I was like, who is that person? And in the months that have passed, she's been pretty much, I think, the only person in sense over there. And it's just on a personal level, it's a great privilege for me to be able to introduce her, because I've been admiring what this woman has been doing in that space, in that place, surrounded by this system that is, God knows what sometimes, right? It looks very antiquated too. And to have a voice of the people there sort of representing what really matters to most Canadians in Ottawa is really an amazing thing for us to have at this time. So it is my great honor and privilege to introduce Elizabeth May.
I don't think I've ever seen such a fun auctioneer, and it was just absolutely fabulous. And I want to thank everybody who just bought dinners out with me, because the thing is, I come to your house and make you dinner for free and you didn't know it, but I'm very, very grateful for all the support for the Green Party. I've been asked to speak for 15 minutes and tell you what my first year in office has been like, and tell you what's coming up and how we save the whole world. So I'm going to be speaking very fast, and je peux aussi, c'est obligatoire que je parle français, fais la traduction, que je veux. I'll have to skip the French part. So I'm thrilled to be here with my friend Adriane Carr. I well remember November 19th, because while you were waiting for 45 minutes with a camera stuck in your face, I was in Ottawa, where it was a whole lot later, being a big country in a 3-hour time zone. And I was actually tracking the votes, because the wonderful Craig Canton, who works at the Green Party, was reporting out to those of us who were too technologically challenged to figure out how to do it ourselves, and posting the results. So on my little BlackBerry, I was ahead, behind. It was, I don't know what, 2 in the morning before I knew Adriane had won and could go to bed happy. And I also, of course, had just, earlier that year, as Adriane mentioned, May 2nd, 2011, I was elected the first member of Parliament for the Green Party. It was an amazing upset, because although I was sure that it was very likely I was going to, when you're waving at cars and people are honking horns and you could knock on doors and you look down streets and there's Green Party signs everywhere. But the conventional wisdom, such as it was that I didn't have a hope in hell. And I remember being interviewed by a guest host on the Bill Good show, definitely not Bill Good, from CKNW, the week before the election. I don't know if any of you heard this. Yes, and he said, with all due respect, you couldn't be elected dog catcher. And I thought, gee, the due respect part didn't last till the end of the film. And I said to him, well, actually, I think I have a pretty good chance. But what I was thinking was, he's right. I would never want to be dog catcher. Want to take all the dogs home. I would be no good at it at all. I'm completely unskilled to be a dog catcher. And thank goodness I'm running to be a member of Parliament, because I think I'll be really good at that. But dog catcher, ooh, not so much. So maybe he didn't mean to be disrespectful or any of that. Then it's amazing how the punditry and the media conventional wisdom immediately shifts gears, right? You're never wrong. Okay, so somehow I won, which wasn't supposed to happen. But immediately, it makes no difference. We hear from all the pundits, because one Green MP can't do anything. And actually, she's one of my favorite media people, so I hate to recall Katie O'Malley on the House, because she said, well, the Greens are all happy now because they got elected, but we'll never hear from her again because one MP can't do anything. She can't sit on committees, she maybe doesn't lunch, she'll never get a question period. The funny thing is, now some of you will have a sense of this because, you know, you're here and people have been saying really nice things to me all night. But after my first chronological year as a member of Parliament, we had a question from the Victoria Times columnist asking my staff, do we know whether, you know, I've spoken how often in the House of Commons compared to the average MP, right? How much have I spoken in the House of Commons compared to the MP? So we checked and we discovered that I've actually spoken more in the House of Commons than any MP. More than Stephen Harper, more than Bob. Seriously, like totally more than any MP by like a lot. Okay, so that sort of surprised them, and then I asked questions in question period. It turns out I get a question once a week. I can make points of order anytime there's an appropriate point of order to be made. I figured out you can go to any committee in the House of Commons that's meeting. I have a right to sit at the table. I have to ask for the discretion of the chair to ask a question. That doesn't work so well, but I do manage to get, thanks to the miracle of BlackBerries, it's a whole lot easier than passing a note. You notice that? So if I want a question asked and I'm at a parliamentary committee, I just write a little email to one of my friends in one of the other parties, and they're so glad to have a good question. They usually ask. Question. So I get my questions asked, and I found out through the parliamentary committees, through the use of volunteers, I have at any given time somewhere between 18 and 24 interns who are volunteers who are getting usually graduate degrees at U of O or Carleton, who are assigned to a specific committee. And they are my eyes and ears on the ground, and they tell me what's going on in the committees, and that's how we stay on top of legislation, and that's how we're prepared to introduce amendments at report stage. That's how come I introduced 330 amendments to Bill C-38, the first round of the budget. I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to change the bill. I wanted to make it impossible for them not to agree to some amendments by creating a voting process that would take so long that they would have to relent. Because if each one of my amendments that had been accepted by the Speaker as in order had received a separate vote, which I believe they should have, we would have been voting for 4 days. As it was, they compressed the votes, so we were only voting for 23 and a half hours straight. And I don't think anyone but me would have been willing to go through 4 days, so I felt they would compromise. So sadly, at least what it proved was that Stephen Harper was prepared to submit a bill of 425 pages that fundamentally changed, deleted, repealed, destroyed 70 different laws. And that bill would go from first reading through second reading through committee, back at report stage, through passage to royal assent without a single change of even the most minor aspect. I mean, not a comma, not a semicolon, nothing. That's very unusual. I used to work in government. We used to, I mean, the point of parliamentary committees is to approve the legislation. So I'm also watching, since, of course, I've been there in exactly the period in which Stephen Harper has formed a false majority with a minority of the votes. He's got a majority of the seats. And it's absolutely appalling to watch legislation that we've had. Well, it was bad enough in C-38. Legislation that was passed under Brian Mulroney, like the Canadian Environmental Assessment, introduced under Brian Mulroney, passed under Jean Chrétien, was the Environmental Assessment Act. The Fisheries Act amendments around habitat we've had since the 1960s. But this new bill, C-45, is salvaging the Navigable Waters Protection Act that we've had since 1882. And deciding, as you probably know, that navigable waters in Canada, unlike the definition we've had since 1882, that a body of water is navigable if you can get a canoe or a kayak down it, the definition of navigable is now ever so much easier. You just look at the list at the back of the bill. So where Canada has millions of lakes, they're prepared to list 97 of them. And where we have tens of thousands of rivers, we now have a bill that lists 62 rivers. 62. One only for the Yukon. I mean, very few for BC. So you look at this, you think, this is outrageous. So of course, I'm now preparing amendments on that. I love my job in the House of Commons. I love being able to raise issues before other people see them. And that's because I'm just there doing the work. People wonder, how come I read C-38 before anybody else? Because it's there and I have to work on it. Other MPs are, and this is not to put too much time on this, but I need to explain what's happening to Parliament, which is what's really happening to democracy, is that all the other parties control their MPs. Totally, all the time. All the other parties tell their MPs how they're going to vote. Every day, all the time. On every bill. Every day, the parliamentary pages, who are wonderful young people attending the University of Ottawa, who get through a very competitive selection process, get 3 pages in the House of Commons. One of their duties is to receive from the whip, something the Green Party will never have, actually. No whips. But every other party has a party whip, who hands out to the pages how that party is voting that day, and every piece of paper, they're not even told privately and have to hold it in their brains until they get out there to remember. Every single desk of every single MP, other than the 2 independents, and of course me, gets a piece of paper put on that desk. All the Conservatives, all the NDP, all the Liberals, and even the 4 remaining Bloc Québécois MPs get the piece of paper that says, today on the first vote, vote no, on the second vote, vote yes, on the third vote, non, 80, oui. It's extraordinary to me. And one day, as the pieces of paper were being handed out, one of my friends, and I've made tons of friends. When I bring my daughter to Parliament, I find myself saying, oh, I want you to meet another friend from work. And it doesn't matter if they're Conservatives or Liberals or New Democrats or Bloc, they're my friends, and I really want my daughter to meet them. So one of my friends from work turned around and said to me, as he looked at his list of how he's supposed to vote that day, so Elizabeth, how do you know how to vote? You know, it's just one of those funny things I have to mention him. So they all know, and you know what? They wish they could do it too. That's the sad secret, that's actually the hopeful secret of Canadian democracy. I would say, from knowing my friends at work, that by far the vast majority, approaching 90% of them, would, in different circumstances, I'd be proud to have them as Green Party candidates. They're all good people. They care about their communities. Their main inspiration to run for Parliament is to be of service. They believe that what they're doing is going to be a good thing for their country. And they don't learn the sad truth until they're elected. That they have no role, they have no voice, they have no brain. They're supposed to sit there and do what they're told and toe the party line. They're supposed to vote how they're told. God knows why any of them would ever read the legislation, because if they read it, they might realize they had a different opinion than how they're told to vote. And that's why, I hate to say this out loud, but I don't think any of the other MPs read all the legislation, or even most, because why would you? Political party structures are there to tell people how to think, what to speak. They're handed the notes that tell them what to say. It's tragic because it's a squandering of the goodwill and the good intentions of a bunch of really decent people who are being essentially held hostage by a system of hyper-partisan party politics run by a bunch of people who really don't differ very much from each other. And that group of people, I think there's, a clinical definition for them somewhere in the DSM, but they're the spin doctors. They may be sociopathic, they may be psychopathic, I'm not sure. They will never run for election. They will never put themselves out there. They live in the dark places. They use focus groups and polling and all kinds of strategy to figure out how to get to a victory, to win power. And what they want to do with that power once they get it isn't relevant to the people who are actually calling the shots. So every day in the House of Commons, the kinds of things that get raised by the other parties are not the things that are right in front of us as work. They're the things they think will get them on the news for a quick soundbite and a bump in the polls. It's why when I was trying to raise awareness of the fact that Stephen Harper had already signed in Vladivostok, the Canada-China Investment Treaty, and we hadn't seen the text of it yet. And first I demanded to see the text. Then when we got the text, I found we weren't going to have a vote or a debate. And while this was to me the #1 issue before Parliament, all the other opposition parties were fixated on one thing. Do you even remember now what the one big thing was? E. coli in the plant, the XL beef plant. Now that's clearly an upsetting issue. That's clearly a scandal. But it is not important compared to the Canada-China Investment Treaty. And I couldn't get any of the other parties to pay sufficient attention to decide that this was the issue we had to take on in the 21 sitting days when that was before the House of Commons. Now the 21 sitting days are up, and I'm still not prepared to give up on fighting the Canada-China Investment Treaty. It's not ratified yet. Now the fact that it's not ratified yet is good news, because legally, and it's not morally correct, and it's not even constitutionally correct, previous prime ministers would have always put a treaty of this importance in front of Parliament for a vote, even if it wasn't legally required. I mean, I actually had to go back to I'm glad I saved all my law books from law school. I actually went back to my old constitutional law book to check, and yes, a treaty of importance, even if it doesn't require implementing legislation, such as this one, even if it doesn't require a vote in Parliament, every other prime minister would have put it forward as a matter of course. In the same way that Jean Chrétien took the Kyoto Protocol, which was a treaty that did not require implementing legislation, it went to the House of Commons for a vote. This treaty, which will bind Canada for a minimum of 15 years, and then it's automatically renewed for another 15 years, unless Canada gives a 1-year written notice that we want out of it, and at the point that we give the 1-year written notice that we would get out of it, at the end of that 1-year written notice, any existing Chinese investment in Canada is protected for a further 15 years under the treaty. So to add that up, that's 31 years we're stuck. And that gives state-owned enterprises of China, like Sinopec, the 5th largest corporation on earth, which I would imagine to Stephen Harper's discomfort, is the #1 purchaser of Iranian oil. And which has practices, I mean, you can imagine, this is a country that, you try to form a union, you end up in jail. This is not a place of, they say, oh, human rights are improving in China. Well, Amnesty International doesn't think so. Human Rights Watch doesn't think so. The Tibetan monks who are self-immolating don't think so. What makes Stephen Harper think human rights improved in China? Well, there's one reason. It turns out, which who knew this, if you're developing the oil sands and you have, as Stephen Harper does, a goal, believe it or not, a goal of 6 million barrels of oil a day. This is a goal I have never heard from any of the oil patch CEOs. This is a goal unique to Stephen Harper. He wants 6 million barrels of oil a day from the oil sands. They're currently at 1.7 million barrels of oil a day. And you know what? It must be hard for him because free market capitalism has let him down. Too many CEOs turn out to be weak-willed, yellow-livered, pussy-footin' cowards because they start looking at market forces and saying, like Suncor is saying now, Cabinet gave them approval for the Jocelyn mine to expand in the oil sands. And Joe Oliver announced, we're giving the permit for the Jocelyn mines, and it's terrible that all those environmental reviews held up this mine. But we're approving the Jocelyn mine. Suncor and its partner for the Jocelyn mine, Total SA of France, are looking at market forces and looking at prices of oil and looking at the cost of expanding the oil sands. And they said, we're going to go slow on that one. We're not interested in pursuing it right now. It doesn't make sense economically. So, poor Stephen Harper. He's never been so let down by free market capitalism. And it turns out, I never thought I'd see it. I've worked all my whole life in public policy, working to protect the environment. I thought our enemies were globalization and multinationals and corporate greed. Turns out there is a critical deficit globally of rapacious capitalist corporations. There is simply an insufficient amount of corporate free market greed. And so as a result, they have to go for rapacious communist greed because they can't get enough money from the free market. So they've got to get the money from China. That's the root of it. China hasn't changed. Stephen Harper's kind of changed the part. So now, not only have we allowed pressure from China, and I'm certain of this, it's pressure from the People's Republic of China that led to killing Fisheries Act habitat protections, repealing the Environmental Assessment Act, changing the National Energy Board Act so that Cabinet has the ability to overturn an NEB decision. Those are all things, and now the Navigable Waters Protection Act. These are moves to expedite development, and it's clear that in the past, Chinese investors had complained that they didn't like the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act. I don't see any reason. I mean, Stephen Harper on his own and his own antipathy towards all things environmental, that can explain most of it. But the real smoking gun here, in my theory, is the decision to say that Cabinet can overturn an NEB decision. Because the National Energy Board is not controlled by Greenpeace. The National Energy Board approves pipelines. The National Energy Board does not turn down pipelines. So why would Stephen Harper decide that it was important in Bill C-38, the omnibus bill, to fundamentally change the role of a quasi-judicial body like the NEB and say it's now merely making recommendations, not decisions, and Cabinet can overturn them? I think it's because he probably had a conversation in Beijing in February in which they said, how can you promise us the Northern Gateway project is going ahead? Isn't there a risk that this regulatory body you have might say no? I mean, one can easily understand the anxiety of the People's Republic of China about the reliability of Stephen Harper to dictate things in a democracy. So he changed the law. I'm sure of it. How much more will we be unable to repair these laws in the future if the People's Republic of China has the right to sue us, if we change our laws or improve them in such a way that they lose their expectation of profits? That's why this is a terrifying prospect. Just this week, under Chapter 11 of NAFTA, which works the same way in terms of investor-state provisions, a US-based corporation is suing the province of Quebec for banning fracking. So here I am in the House of Commons working on these issues, and I feel sometimes as though, I always feel that my work is valuable. I work really hard across party lines. I prepared a lot of background material for MPs in particularly the Conservative caucus in hopes they'd find a way to stop their boss from ratifying this treaty. I called every premier across Canada. I begged everybody. It's not ratified yet, so we don't give up on stopping it. But I've got to say the one thing that right now has me so happy, I feel like I have a winning lotto ticket in my pocket and I'm scared to take it out and check the number because I want it so much I can't bear it. And that's the by-elections. Because right now, we're close to having 2 new Green Party members of Parliament to join me in Ottawa. Some of the young Greens here, can you come over to Victoria and canvass with us? We've got a little bit more time left, but if you can't come over to Victoria, you can go to our website and you can sign up to do phone canvassing from your own home. We have a great software program. You can just do it off your computer. Our candidate in Victoria is a friend of mine from almost the last 30 years. His name's Donald Galloway. He's a professor of law at UVic, and he has volunteer time, done so much on human rights issues, on refugee rights, on immigration law. He's a wonderful candidate. He's wowing them in the debates, and we're clearly in second place, and we're catching up on the NDP. This is the first time ever that I've been involved in a campaign which is clearly, it's either going to be an NDP member of Parliament or it's going to be a Green member of Parliament. The Conservatives are at 12% in Victoria. Yeah. You know, we're close. It killed me to leave, Vancouver Island to come over here tonight. And I thought, I promised Adriane and it's really, really important, but I just want to be knocking on doors in Victoria. Meanwhile, in Calgary Centre, where I'm going tomorrow, I don't know how many of you are following this, but our candidate is Chris Turner, author of The Geography of Hope. The Leap, How to Survive and Thrive in a Sustainable Future. He's a brilliant author, he's a journalist, and he's got buzz going in Calgary Centre right now. The last poll out of Calgary Centre showed that in the last 2 weeks, his polling had improved 109%. In the election, we're now at 24% in Calgary. We're about to eclipse Liberal, we're about to eclipse the Conservative, we're about to elect a Green Party Member of Parliament in Calgary. So we need your help now. So, with more Greens we can do, with 2 Greens we can do twice as much as I've been doing. It's an obvious math, right? With 3 Greens we can do 3 times as much as I've been doing. And the best part is, going back to those poor oppressed regions of really wonderful people who made the mistake of running for big parties that tell them what to do and tell them what to think and tell them what to say, is we can prove that it's possible to be a political party with a leader in the House and with members of Parliament who function as intelligent human beings on their own.
Right on.
This isn't about the Green Party doing well. I swear to you, I'm not that partisan yet. This is about rescuing democracy from the clutches of an increasingly dictatorial system which shows consistent abuse and contempt for Parliament and democracy itself. We have very little time. We have this moment in which we can prove to the rest of Canada that with Greens in the House, we change everything. So back to Katie O'Malley and her idea that one Green MP couldn't do anything. Then they noticed, gee, how come Elizabeth May is the one who's organized all the opposition parties to fight Bill C-38? Maybe that was just, but how come it is that I'm the first person who's noticed what the Canada-China Investment Treaty is all about? You know what it is? My friends in the other parties, when they show up in the House of Commons, and it's most of the days that House is empty. Parliament is empty except for question period or for when there's votes. And my friends in the other parties receive, when they're there, it's because they've been assigned something called house duty. They call it house duty, I call it showing up for work. You're supposed to be there in the moment, working on what's in front of you. You can't be an effective parliamentarian if all you're doing is trying to create winning conditions for a situation that's unforeseeable that will exist 3 years from now in the next general election. You can't be an effective parliamentarian or represent your constituents if your whole life is dictated by trying to get, who's going to remember in 2015 that when I was trying to draw attention to Bill C-38, the Omnibus Budget Bill, the key issue for Tom Mulcair was why was Conrad Black allowed back into Canada? For 10 whole days, right? I said, please, please, because they get a question every day and I get one a week. No one will remember those things, but they will remember what happens in Parliament and the fact that we're there, me, plus Donald Galloway, plus Chris Turner, and then I swear there will be more, so that we can go forward and prove to the rest of Canada you can be a political party that serves your constituents first, Canada first, and your party last. You can be a political party that cares more about democracy and the future of this planet than your own poll points from one week to the next. You can be in Parliament and care more about your grandchildren having a future and stopping greenhouse gases from reaching the tipping point where we run into runaway global warming, which is to me the biggest thing that I panic about, even more than the Canada-China Treaty. We can be a political party that stands for what's true and what's real, and not what is the illusory hallucinations of the spin doctors in the back room. I've had 15 minutes, I know I abused that, I know I went a little long. I just want to say, in the next week, before November 26th, when the voters in Calgary Centre and Victoria go to the polls, please Sign up to do phone canvassing. We need you. Come over to Victoria. We need you. Go to Calgary Centre if you've got friends there. We are this close to tripling the Green Party caucus. And as I said, it would be so extraordinary. And it would deliver a message that I think could drive Stephen Harper out of office before 2015, which should be